There we
because it
go.
might end up being sterile,
All right. I think we're on now.
Wait
Ready?
a minute.
Yeah. Let's see here.
It says webinar is now streaming live on.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it might end up being sterile,
Oh, shoot. I heard Coach there.
All right.
Adam, careful what you say.
Yeah. God darn it, Adam.
All right, you guys. We're on live
Can't
on
take you
YouTube.
The bloopers here of
Getting the ends of our jokes in. Never a dull moment with my three guys here. Coaches, welcome back. So here we are talking today about creating effective parent relationships. I think this is a excellent support topic, especially during this time. But really what happens is parents become at the high school level, I think a really huge part of the team. I know in the college level too, the more we can keep a certain kind of relationship, it's beneficial to the athletes playing as well. And so I think this is a topic that's going to be helpful to our coaches. And I want to start out by just talking about what do we think is kind of, or what do you see? And it could be different for every coach. What do you see is the role for parents as far as as far as coaches go? So how do we see them? And I'll start out by answering that question. And so for me, I think that our parents have a real cool opportunity to be able to spend time and see their children a lot of times play the sport, to be involved and be able to support them through and through. I know one of the things that I used to do as a coach at the high school level was to let the coach, the players, or the parents know ahead of time that, hey, look, your athlete has a couple of things to deal with, right? Like they go to school, they're coming to practice, that's hard, they're trying to do their homework, and then they might have a coach like me giving them a hard time about whatever it is, level up and do that kind of thing as far as the sport goes. And so there's nothing like having you as a parent to be their support, right? To not be another coach necessarily. And we can't tell parents what to do, but I think just having them or designing a role for them to kind of think about is a huge deal. And so for you guys, what would you say is a role that as coaches we can kind of promote? Coach Buckley, you want to hit that first?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say that I think this is a real important topic. And I think for young coaches, especially, I know when I was a young coach, I guess I'm still young, but when I was a young coach, I was afraid of parents. You're afraid that you're getting judged all the time by them, that, you just kind of stay away from them. You're not sure. You think everything's going to be negative. And I learned that, man, if you're going to have a successful program, you've got to educate your parents and you got to get them on board with you. And I think that's real important. You have to make it a regular practice to communicate with parents and educate them about the sport and the role that they need to play as part of your team. And I think your success depends on getting parents to work with you, not against you. And I think that starts right from the get-go. When you have your parent meeting at the beginning of the season, you've got to let them know that, hey, I'm here for your kid. I want the best for them, and I want to communicate with you. The communication, I think, is the biggest key with parents, and letting them know, all the time what's going on. And, you have to be proactive. You got to be proactive in the sense that you don't wait for problems to come up. If you see something stemming, you got to be proactive and go take care of that right away. And I think parents appreciate that. They like it when you communicate with them a lot. They don't want to find out last minute that things change or that there's a problem. I think also too, you've got to get their role on the team. Let them know what their role is. Let them know what appropriate and inappropriate behavior is on the sideline or in the stands, that you want them to support every player, not just their kid. You don't want them to coach from the stands. They've got to win your trust and let them know that, hey, we're going to do the coaching. when the game's going on. And if you have something that you need to talk to us about, or if you disagree with something, hold that until after the game, or and find a better time to bring that across. And I think that, and also getting them involved in the program so that they feel a part of it. I've always been a proponent of that. And I just think, whether it's working in the concession stand, where it's doing stats, helping with meals in a football program, anything like that. We did a Christmas tree working with fundraisers. We used to do a Christmas tree fundraiser, and in fact, they still do, except this year they didn't let them because of the pandemic. But what I liked about that was it was a lot of work and took a lot of time, but it got a lot of parents involved, whether it was the paperwork of it, whether it was, the kids were involved, the dads got involved being out there with their sons, helping with the trees. And it just makes everybody feel like, okay, hey, I see what's going on. These coaches work hard and parents working together. And I think that just builds a great community and sets the tone kind of for what you're about. You got to let them know what you're about, and that, hey, I'm here for your kid. I'm not going to do something, negative. And they want to be able to trust you too, know that you have their best interest. You got to also talk to them about what your policy is on playing time, and what, let them know all that ahead of time. And I think that just makes it so you have less problems when the season gets going.
Thanks, Coach. Any follow-ups as far as roles?
Go ahead,
What do
Adam.
you-
Well, yeah, I mean, well said, Coach. I think that, it's so critical to get your parents involved early, and you have to be consistent with your parents, obviously, and making sure that it's happening at all three levels. If you're the varsity head coach, it's important that you're really getting all the parents together and getting them on the same page early. And as Coach mentioned, you really have to set those boundaries. Have to set the boundaries on when we can and can't communicate. But again, early on, if you set those boundaries, what your expectations are, that's going to really help a lot. I started working with parents early on. Coach also talked about the meals, and Coach Rodriguez can remember this as well. We used to have our parents showing up every Friday and would prepare a nice meal for the players, and prepare peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and all kinds of goodies for the players. And that was just something that we started. And it was great to see the involvement. Parents want to be informed. They also want to be involved. And that's really the goal of a head coach, right? Is to really, you got to be an expert when you're working with parents. Those special antennas come up. You got to make sure you're able to communicate effectively with them, but also create those boundaries. Because again, we're here for your child. We're here for you as parents to make sure that your son or daughter has a great experience, and most importantly, a great high school experience. But at the end of the day, we want them to make sure that there's boundaries. But yeah, parents love to be involved, and being an active coach and also having an active family was important for me as a head coach. Having my wife involved and my mom and dad involved, everybody was there to really support every effort. Because again, we're also, remember, this is really important, is that you have to bring parents along. And not everybody knows how to volunteer, and the importance of volunteerism. Right? I think it's important to have a slide at the very beginning of your presentation when you're talking to parents about what really is volunteerism and why is that important. And over the years that I've coached, and at all levels, whether it was elementary to junior high to high school, and making sure that there was a consistent message, and having the opportunity of being able to coach the same players for as many years as I did, I also brought parents along. And you have to teach, you have to show them, you have to show the parents, and talk about the importance of volunteerism and why you need their support. And just like Coach said, I mean, to have parents involved early on, it just makes a big difference. And you'll start to see more and more families showing up to your games because they feel a part of it. So there's a lot of good stuff when you're connecting with parents, but it does take some time and it does take some effort. If you have a designated assistant coach who works well with parents, I used to have several dads that coach with me along the way that really had a great rapport with parents. And guess what? They were promoted to a liaison one, working with parents, and allowing coaches to do that, setting up your expectations, of course, with your coaches, and making sure they can relay that message for you. But having a liaison, having a coach work directly with our parents every week is very, very important. And again, our players loved it. Having a nice meal on Fridays during lunchtime, they would have a great, whether it was spaghetti or whatever. It was just a lot of good food that was prepared by our parents, and strictly all volunteered, and we appreciated that very much. So lots of good stuff.
Yeah, I don't think, I think those coaches did a wonderful job. They touched on just about everything. There's not much left. But what's really comes down to oftentimes with parents is what, in the high school level. What is the biggest thing? Playing time, right? It's usually playing time, and that's a tight wire act for us as coaches when it comes to playing time. I mean, we have the hearts that we always want to get as many players out on the competitive field as possible so that they can enjoy playing, but we also have a obligation to win, right? I mean, once you get to the high school level, it's a lot of, so much of it's about winning, and that's how very often how you keep your position as a coach is by wins and losses. So it's a tight wire act. Again, these coaches did a good job. You have to communicate and put your best foot forward. And not everyone's the best communicator, but I think if you strive for integrity and honesty with your parents and let them know that you're going to be as honest as you can be with them. They're on a need to know basis. However, they are parents. They're not in the inner circle as far as the staff is concerned. So you're going to be as honest as you can be with them and let them know, what's going on with their son or daughter and their playing time. And again, as the other coaches touched on, let them know that they have a stake in the venture in this program, in your program, whether it's the concession, pre-game meals, after practice snacks, fundraising. Those are roles where they can soar and contribute. And that's where you want to lead your parent group, as far as I'm concerned. So they're not so much focused on trying to be sideline coaches, up in the stands coaches, or needling their student athlete at home, as Coach alluded to, but being more support. So they have a stake in the venture, but it needs to be where you want it to be as the head coach and as a staff. It can't be there intermingling or knowing inner circle ideas or thoughts. Can't be there. So there are parameters, and again, it's a juggling act. It's not easy. I've had my ups and downs, as I've alluded to in prior podcasts. I went an entire season and the banquet ceremony, and parents thought I was the head coach, and I wasn't. They didn't even know who the head coach was. So that's a poor job there by that head coach in that instance of letting parents know where we stood as a staff and our roles. And again, as Adam touched on, you have to let them know our roles and their roles.
Mhm.
So it's touchy, and you get better as you go. If with experience, if you always strive to get better, and you're doing it from a place of honesty, integrity, and caring.
Right. Yeah, and I appreciate that. I actually want to go into that conversation as far as, how do we approach our parents regarding playing time. Like, just let's kind of give our coaches a little bit of a feel for what it might look like, or what it has looked like for the four of us. But before we talk about that, yeah, the art of coaching is something else. And I mean, whenever we talk about, creating relationships with parents, that's the art part of coaching. It's not the science. I mean, the science, you might have all the X's and O's down and be able to get that part, but the art of coaching is being beautiful at relationships, like getting that part right. And to me, that's the amazing thing about us as coaches, is can we level up by not knowing more of the sport, but also by knowing more of how to deal with relationships. And so how do we have a conversation with parents about playing time. And for me, I was kind of a no conversation about playing time coach, but that I think that came after something else. And the thing that came first was my parents knew me well. Right. So because my parents knew me well, this is just my belief, and I didn't have any parent trouble with this playing time scenario. And I think because I spent so much time knowing them, what they knew is it wasn't about favoritism. It wasn't about me selecting one over me over the others. It wasn't. It was never anything about that. And so there was never conversations about playing time, one as a rule. That was a rule that I had set, but I also think that I gave them a sense of security around, I care about you as a family, and your athlete here is going to be the best version of themselves on my team. It doesn't matter where they're playing, or if they're a coach on the bench, with that's what all the players are. If they're sitting on the bench, they're coaches. That's their role. If they're a coach on the bench all the time, that's their role. If they're on the court all the time, that's their role. It doesn't matter what they're doing. The point is they're going to be the best version of themselves possible. And I think parents start to trust you as a coach because you're transparent, and they start getting a feel for you. So I think building a relationship with parents where you're transparent and they can see you is a really helpful tool, at least in my scenario, for being able to say, I'm not talking about playing time with any parents, but I am willing to have a relationship, and we can interact, and I can see how you're doing, and I care about your child, and we can talk as parents about how to grow the athlete that you're entrusting me with. So that was kind of my role, and that's how I had conversations about playing time. What about you, coaches?
I'll say two things that helped me be a better communicator with parents. And number one was when I became a parent, because I understood things better. Because I understood when my daughter would come to me whining about a coach or whining about playing time, and you feel for them. So you start to understand where parents are coming from, because everybody wants their kid to feel good about playing and have a great experience. And so when they come home depressed or down, it bothers you. So that helped me as a coach understand where parents were coming from. The second thing was when I became an athletic director, because they're coming to me all the time about those kind of situations, because you'd always say, well, why didn't you talk to the coach? Oh, the coach says you can't talk about playing time, or what, so I get that. And I found that most of these parents, all they want is somebody just to listen to them. So for me, shutting my mouth and not thinking about what I'm going to say, but just listening to them was a big difference, because a lot of them would walk out of there just, hey, thanks for listening to me, coach. And so that was a big thing. And I think, if you're, as a coach, if you're honest and upfront with these parents about playing time, I think they get it. And the other thing that I think is important about talking about playing time, and this is probably more at the high school level than dealing with younger kids, is I always tell the parents, I want you, and I tell them this at the early meeting that we'll have, before the season, that if there's a playing time issue, I want your kid to come to me first, because your kid needs to learn how to grow up, and you can't always be the guy for them. They need to understand. And so I said, you can come talk to me about playing time only if your kid has come to me first and we haven't figured it out by then. And then if you're still, not satisfied, then come talk to me. Because I felt like 90% of the time we got that taken care of between the kid. He understood what was lacking, what he needed to do to get more playing time, and rather than trying to relay that through the parent. And the other part is just when I'm dealing with parents too, I find that you can really lower the tone if you always start out with, this is what I love about your kid. Parents always want to hear that there's something really great about their kid. And so I'll be honest with you, they don't have the best skill right now, and there's people in front, but this is what I really appreciate about your kid. They work hard, they give it everything they've got. And, if you can give some positive feedback about their kid, it really makes a difference. And they walk out of there, at least they know that coach likes my kid, he cares about my kid. Because most of the times oh, you don't play my kid because you don't like him. No, that's not the case. And so I think those are things that have really helped me through the many years of coaching. And I feel like, I'm a better coach with that now than I was back in the early days.
Adam or Keith?
Go ahead, Adam.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point, Coach. I think obviously having that conversation with your players, and this happens at the beginning of the meeting, the very first meeting you have with the athletes and their parents, and again, laying out the expectations of what you expect as a coach, but also making sure that you make time. I used to have office hours, and the players knew that they could come and see me during that time and that time only. And because I didn't want that to carry over onto the practice field or the game field, for example. If we wanted to have a conversation about playing time, they knew that they had a certain time they could come and visit with me and share. And obviously how that would carry over to parents. Coach is exactly right. I didn't want to talk to any parents unless I talked to the athlete. After talking with the athlete, if we felt like we needed to get the parents involved, let's do that. And let's have that conversation. However, it's really important that you get the athlete and the parents together all at once, not talking to the player and then talking to the parents separately. You bring them all together and you have that family meeting. And all that goes based on the relationship, as Coach alluded to earlier, about building that community, building that family where they know they can come and talk to you. And then you have the whole family together, and let's have this conversation. One of the other areas that I work with is if there was a parent questioning what was going on at practice, I encourage them to come out to practice. I encourage them to come and watch their son and have a chance to really see what's going on out there. And there was some parents that really thought their son should be playing. Great, I agree. Let's see what we need to do, but I need you to come out to practice first, and you tell me what you see out at practice. Sometimes, parents would get that little reality check and watch their son. And they could figure it out after that this is the reason why your son's not playing. Maybe they're not hustling. Maybe when Coach Valencia is saying you got to hustle and they're not hustling. Or maybe it's their attitude. But again, all that can be cleared up if you create that opportunity as a head coach or as a coach, even if it's before practice. We're going to have a discussion about playing time before practice. Or after practice, as an example. Lay that out so your players know when to approach you, and they're not approaching you during team or during individual time. You want to make sure that you're clear on that. It's so important to be organized as a head coach. I learned so much over the years from various coaching, from coaches that showed me this is how you communicate effectively, and I'm always learning. Even today, I learn how to communicate very effectively, but at the end of the day, your job is to really set up a good balance, and that's hard to do, because you got to look at grades, you got to look at attitudes, you got to look at everything. It's all part of it. But again, if you explain that at the beginning, it'll alleviate so many headaches and problems that you may have down the road. And I learned that through the course of growing. And yes, you want to play every athlete, and especially when you get into high school and even at the collegiate level. High school is obviously much different than junior high, but there's just so much, and the more that you can communicate, the more effective it'll be.
Right.
Well said, both of you. If we take it from the position that we're already going to have, we're at the parent student athlete meeting. If we take it from there, okay, and then we're at that point. What I have found in my experience is that oftentimes the student athlete will, let's say, not be as accurate with their parent about what's going on as maybe they should be. Okay, things are getting relayed to parents oftentimes from their child, from their student athlete, that maybe is being viewed from a different lens and coming out differently to their parents than really what's going on in the competitive field about. And I found that a lot. So sometimes you're just clearing things up. It's just you're having to go there and say, well, wait a minute, that's not quite accurate here. That's not how it happened, or that's not how it is happening. this is what is going on, A, B, C. And oftentimes that in itself alleviates a lot of tension, and you can move forward from there, because a lot of times the student athlete's seen it one way, and the coach is seen it another way, and that needs to be relayed to the parent accurately what's happening. You're and the other thing is, you're not going to win over every parent, regardless of how many meetings, interventions, seances, whatever you want to call them. You're not always going to win everybody over. So you, as a coach, have to understand that. And but it's not going to prevent you from putting your best foot forward. And again, being honest, a person of integrity, and coming from a place of caring for your student athletes. And so it's not going to prevent you from doing that. But that is difficult. And that I had a difficult time with that too, because I wanted to win everybody over. And I just couldn't do it. And I was like, why can't I? And it's just humanness. That's why, coach. And it's just the way it goes. So we have to accept that as coaches. And again, but as long as we're doing the best we can, and from a good place, that's what matters. And that's kind of how I see things.
Yeah, I like that.
Good point,
The
Keith.
thing that
I like that. I was just going to add to that. Really, really well said, Coach. I think that as Coach Buckley had mentioned earlier about your athletic director, how important it is to include him or her in your communication. Make sure they understand. Obviously, you're in communication with your athletic director, but that is so critical to make sure that line of communication is really open, because you got to have that support. Got to have that support. I know when I was at the high school level, I had a great athletic director that there was a lot of things that we worked on together, and we would have our little Monday meetings, and he knew exactly where I was headed, and he knew exactly what the expectations were, and he knew that he always said, "Hey, if parents are coming to you, I want to talk to the parents. Have them come and see me." And I really appreciated that, and now that I reflect back, I think, wow, he really took on a lot. He wasn't around a whole lot in terms of being out there daily, but he said, "Hey, here are my office hours. If they need to talk to somebody about playing time, they can come and see me." But on the flip side of that, it's important for you as a coach to make sure that athletic director knows exactly what your expectations are, and really laying out all the goals of your program. Again, that's the biggest support you can get there at the high school level.
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple of things, and we'll close on this concept if we can get a brief piece from each of you. What's something that coaches can use that will help them to build that relationship with the parent. And so I know, Coach Buckley, you already mentioned about just being able to hear them or being able to listen. One of the things that I think too is helpful is to validate them as parents, not necessarily what it is that they're bringing to you, but just validating them as parents is a really big deal. The idea that they care enough to show up to games, or that they care enough to want to try to stand up for their child. We all, and especially as parents, all of us are parents, and we get that, and so us just being able to see that those are opportunities for validation. I'm sure there's several more, but I think that's one thing that coaches you can take with you, is to be able to validate your parents as much as possible. Find ways to do that. Anybody else have another piece that coaches can take with them that would help them, a concept that would help them in creating relationships with their parents?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I just think, whether it be at your preseason meeting or your awards banquet, that you validate parents and thank them so much for their support, whatever role they had, just thanking them and making them understand that parent involvement and support is so important for a successful program. And the other piece that we haven't talked about, but I know it really helped me when I got back into coaching, is with technology, there's so many great tools to stay in great communication with parents. Mm-hmm. And I use and still use a Remind app. It's remind.com, and it's a text program, because people don't look at their emails anymore. They look at their text. So it was a text program where I could text them real quick, the nice thing about this program is you can put whether people can respond or not, but you're putting out, and it's limited to so many characters, so it can't be real long, but you're saying, hey, rainy day, practice in the gym today, or, changing or letting parents know that practice time, especially when you're dealing with freshman parents where they have to come and pick up, they don't want to sit in the car for another, hey, I thought practice was over at this time. So if you're going to have an extra practice or whatever, you let them know by texting them. And they appreciate that so much that they know, oh, game change, or, we've changed the side of the game, or whatever it may be, that you have that. They get that all the time. And it could be, a Facebook page, it could be Instagram, whatever, but use that technology. We have it, and use that to communicate with parents. And I think that has made a big difference with the parents that I've dealt with lately.
Yeah. So communication and appreciation, right? Two big deals right there. Adam, you have one?
Yeah, I just would say the word that comes to mind for me is informed. Keep your parents informed. And just as Coach alluded to, it's so important to keep them dialed in with everything that you're working on. Make that part of your day. Make that part of your day. And I mean that as a coach. That's got to be the first thing on your mind, especially if you're working the lower levels. You want to make sure that your parents know what's going on. Obviously, as they get a little bit older, whether they're their senior year, and you still have to communicate with parents. Now, college level, it's going to be much different, obviously. Parents can't really be involved too much in that part, and not going to be informed. But when I think about informed, parents just want to know what's going on. As long as you can keep your parents involved and informed, you're going to be very successful.
And I think as a head coach, just to add to that, I found that as a head coach, that's probably one of your most important jobs now, is that parent information. I think it's one of your major roles that you got to really stay on top of.
Yep.
Keith, take us.
All right, baby. Hey, I would say be a good politician, man. Shake hands and kiss some babies. I mean, when you see your parents around, be a good neighbor. Wave to them, say hello, smile. Don't be afraid to walk up to them and just, pat them on the back. Hey, what's going on, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so? And oftentimes, mention, as Coach alluded to, mention something positive about the child. And here's a little nugget. Maybe keep it non-athletic, okay? Maybe say, love their effort today. Hey, your daughter had great attitude all this week. Hey, little Joe, his GPA jumped a whole level, or something about them being a great team player.
Yep.
Something keep it non-athletic, those little things like that won't give them a false sense of hope, but it'll keep their attitude positive and let them know that, hey, maybe my guy's not the star of the show, but at least coach recognizes him. He's got his eye on him. Yep. So those things go a long way with parents. As we all know, we're all parents.
Yeah.
One last thing to add is that I wanted to put in, I forgot. Don't be afraid to ask as a coach for help with parents. Being a baseball coach, there's so many projects you got to do in it. And I got stuck in my early years doing it all myself and burned out. And going to parents and saying, you find out you got a welder that's a parent. You got this. I had cages built. I had help with all kinds of things, a dugout built, because I asked parents to help, and they want to help. So don't be afraid to ask.
I appreciate it. All right, you guys. So this is Coach's Conversation. This is probably actually our last live version, but Coach Conversation Cafe will continue at 1:00 on Tuesdays. So we will see you guys all soon. If you guys really, really, really need us to go live ever again, send us emails, send us messages, and we can definitely make that happen. Otherwise, our lives won't be at a planned time. Instead, they'll probably randomly happen, and we'll definitely have a 1:00 every Tuesday Coach's Conversation Cafe for you to be able to see. You guys stay safe, keep loving those children that you're coaching, and take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you soon.